Dozens of Union generals died during the American Civil War, but to determine who was the highest ranking is more complex than you might originally think. First, it's important to understand the rank and army structure. It goes brigadier general, major general, and then lieutenant general, and the army structure broke down into army, corps, division, and brigade. But the Union didn't actually have a lieutenant general until 1864, so the main commanders of armies and corps were major generals. This is important to note because a Union major general in command of an entire army would have a similar impact as a full Confederate general who was also in command of an entire army. So, although over a dozen major generals were killed during the Civil War, not all of them commanded at the same level. Some were commanding divisions, corps, or entire armies. While you would usually go by the commission date to determine who was higher ranking on the same level, I will only focus on the major generals that led corps or armies, even if they technically had a later commission than the others. So, number 1 will be the earliest commission date of any major general that commanded a corps. So, here's the ranking of the 4 Union Major General Corps commanders who were killed during the war. Number 4, John F. Reynolds. Reynolds was born in Pennsylvania in 1820. After finishing 26 in his class of 50 at West Point, he was commissioned as second lieutenant in the 3rd United States Artillery. Like many Civil War generals, he too served in the Mexican-American War, fighting under General Zachary Taylor and participating in the Battle of Buena Vista. After the war, he continued serving in various forts. Although he wasn't exactly anti-slavery, when the Civil War broke out, he was a staunch Unionist. So he was promoted to Brigadier General of Volunteers in 1861. After fighting in the 7 Days Battles, Second Battle of Bull Run, Fredericksburg, and Chancellorsville, Reynolds was actually offered command of the entire Army of the Potomac. If he would have accepted, perhaps his fate would have been different. But Reynolds ultimately declined President Lincoln, and his friend George Meade was placed in command instead. Just a few weeks later, Reynolds was commanding the left wing of the Army of the Potomac in the bloodiest battle of the war at Gettysburg. On the very first day of the battle, Reynolds rode ahead to discuss with General John Buford. As Reynolds was supervising the 2nd Wisconsin, he yelled out, "Forward, men, forward for God's sake, and drive those fellows out of the woods." But just moments later, he fell from his horse with a bullet hole in his neck. Reynolds was the highest-ranking general lost at Gettysburg, and his loss was felt throughout the army, being a man respected and loved by his troops and peers. His death also had a huge impact on the first day of Gettysburg. Since he engaged his corps with Buford, he basically selected the location of the Battle of Gettysburg, turning the smallish engagement into a massive battle. Reynolds died on July 1st, 1863 at the Battle of Gettysburg at 42 years old. He was commissioned as a Major General on November 29th, 1862. Number 3, Jesse L. Reno. Reno was born in Virginia in 1823. After finishing 8th in his class of 59 at West Point, he was commissioned as Brevet Second Lieutenant. Like Reynolds, Reno also served in the Mexican-American War, serving under General Winfield Scott, and fighting in the Siege of Veracruz, Battle of Cerro Gordo, and Battle for Mexico City. After the Mexican-American War ended, Reno served in several locations. In January 1861, Reno had been forced to surrender a federal arsenal to the governor of Alabama. This was before the Civil War even officially began. After being promoted to Brigadier General of the Volunteers in fall of 1861, Reno took command of a brigade and eventually a division by July 1862. After fighting in the Second Battle of Bull Run and the Battle of Chantilly, Reno was appointed a Major General. Just before the Army of the Potomac left to face Lee during the Maryland campaign, Reno was placed in command of the 9th Corps. And on September 13th, 1862, Reno's corps was attempting to intercept Confederate troops in the South Mountains, resulting in the Battle of South Mountain. Known as a soldier's soldier, Reno often fought in the front lines next to his troops. But, like many, this would prove fatal. During the battle, Reno was observing Confederate positions at Fox's Gap, when he was suddenly shot in the chest. Sources differ on if it was a Confederate sharpshooter or accidental friendly fire. But one thing was certain, Jesse L. Reno would not make it. As he was being removed by a stretcher, his friend, General Samuel D. Sturgis, greeted him, and General Reno replied, "Hello, Sam, I'm dead." Sturgis, thinking he was exaggerating, responded by saying it was not that bad, but Reno knew what would happen, replying, yes, I'm dead, goodbye." General Ambrose Burnside issued General Order No. 17 announcing the loss. The commanding general announces to the Corps the loss of their late leader, Major General Jesse L. Reno. By the death of this distinguished officer, the country loses one of its most devoted patriots, the Army one of its most thorough soldiers. In the long list of battles in which General Reno has fought in his country's service, his name always appears with the brightest luster, and he has now bravely met a soldier's death, while gallantly leading his men at the Battle of South Mountain. For his high character and the kindly qualities of his heart in private life, as well as for the military genius and personal daring which marked him as a soldier, his loss will be deplored by all who knew him. Jesse L. Reno died on September 14, 1862 at 39 years of age. He was appointed a Major General on August 20, 1862, but his promotion wasn't confirmed until after his death on March 9, 1863, with a date of rank established as July 18, 1862. Number 2. Joseph K. Mansfield. Mansfield was born in 1803 in Connecticut. After finishing second in his West Point class of 40, he was commissioned as second lieutenant in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Although much of his early career was spent in peacetime, he did fight in the Mexican-American War, being General Zachary Taylor's chief engineer. Mansfield received a brevet promotion to major for his action at Fort Brown, another brevet promotion to lieutenant colonel for his actions at the Battle of Monterey, and finally another brevet promotion to colonel for the Battle of Buena Vista. In 1853, he was officially promoted to colonel and inspector general of the U.S. Army. When the Civil War broke out, he commanded the defense of Washington and was promoted to brigadier general. In fact, General-in-Chief Winfield Scott recommended that Mansfield be placed in command for the volunteer army that was being raised. You might have noticed that Mansfield was significantly older than the previous generals, so he usually was not in the thick of the battle. In fact, his only combat activity during the first year of the war was firing coastal batteries from Hampton Roads against the ironclad CSS Virginia. But, just 2 days before the bloodiest single-day battle of the war at Antietam, Mansfield was given his first ever field command as a general. During the battle, Mansfield's 12th Corps was sent into action to support the left flank of General Joseph Hooker's 1st Corps. However, during the battle, Mansfield saw the 10th Maine firing on Hooker's soldiers. He immediately ordered them to stop, but after closer inspection, Mansfield did confirm that the 10th Maine were indeed firing on rebel soldiers, saying, "Yes, you're right." But just then, a bullet slammed into his chest. Although he was able to ride away from his men for a bit, so that they would not see their commander fall, he knew that the damage was already done. Surgeon Patrick Henry Flood described him as an irreparable loss. He was highly respected by the Army, having been in service for so many years. He was taken to a field hospital and died on September 18, 1862, at 58 years old. Now, here's where things get very interesting. Mansfield is in a bit of a gray area, as he was commissioned as a Major General after his death. This means that he was actually a Brigadier General at the time of his death. Because of the gallantry he displayed at the Battle of Antietam, Congress on March 12, 1863, posthumously promoted him to the rank of Major General of Volunteers. But this was backdated to before his death on July 18, 1862. I included him in second because this posthumous promotion was backdated to a date before Reynolds, and on the same day as Reno. But since Mansfield was promoted to Brigadier General before Reno, he would be senior to him. However, if you are rank purist, then you would not put him here with the other Major Generals. But since he was in command of a corps and was promoted, I decided to put him second. Number 1. John Sedgwick. Sedgwick was born in 1813 in Connecticut. After graduating 24th out of his West Point class of 50, he was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army's artillery branch. Sedgwick, unlike the others, fought in the Seminole War, but like the others, he also fought in the Mexican-American War, serving under both Zachary Taylor and Winfield Scott, receiving 2 brevet promotions during the war. After the Mexican War, Sedgwick was promoted to the rank of Major in the U.S. Cavalry and began serving out west in the Utah War and in the various conflicts with the natives. When the Civil War broke out, Sedgwick reported back to Washington, D.C. to serve as acting Inspector General of the city, and in August he was promoted to Brigadier General of Volunteers. He commanded a division during McClellan's Peninsula Campaign, and was wounded at the Battle of Frazier's Farm and Battle of Antietam. During the next few years, he continued to serve as commander of the 6th Corps in some of the biggest and bloodiest battles of the war at Chancellorsville, Gettysburg, and the Overland Campaign. On May 9, 1864, he was commanding the 6th Corps at the Battle of Spotsylvania Courthouse. Sedgwick was personally directing artillery placements, but Confederate sharpshooters were watching and had already wounded General William Morris. However, Sedgwick ignored his men's warning and in fact joked about it, stating, They couldn't hit an elephant at that distance. Just moments later, a sharpshooter's bullet penetrated his skull, right below his left eye, killing him instantly. As one of the most experienced officers in the army, his death came as a shock to all. He was also one of the most beloved generals in the entire army, especially from his troops, who affectionately called him Uncle John. General Grant remarked that his death was greater than the loss of a whole division of troops. He died on May 9th, 1864, at 50 years old. Sedgwick was commissioned as a Major General on July 4th, 1862. So that is the ranking of the Major Generals that commanded corps. However, there was one Major General that commanded an entire army at the time of his death, the only army commander in the Union to die in battle. Number 1. James B. McPherson. McPherson was born in Ohio in 1828. After finishing first in his West Point class of 52, he was commissioned with the rank of Brevet Second Lieutenant in the Corps of Engineers. Since he was so much younger than the others on this list, he did not fight in the Mexican-American War. But for a year after his graduation, he was assistant instructor of practical engineering at West Point, an unusual position given his age. From 1854 to 1857, McPherson helped improve defenses in New York Harbor and the Hudson River. In 1859, he was promoted to first lieutenant and began constructing defenses on Alcatraz Island. When the Civil War broke out, he requested to transfer back east. After briefly serving on the staff of General Henry Halleck, he was transferred to the Western Theater under the command of General Ulysses S. Grant, serving as his chief engineer during the capture of Fort Henry and Donelson. As a trusted subordinate of General Ulysses S. Grant, McPherson fought with him in the battles of Shiloh, Corinth, and the Siege of Vicksburg. After commanding the 17th Corps in Grant's Army of the Tennessee, McPherson was given command of the entire Army of the Tennessee in 1864. McPherson's army made up the right wing of Sherman's force as he was moving against Atlanta. In July, Confederate General John Bell Hood saw an opportunity and moved against McPherson's army. On July 22nd, Hood unleashed an attack against the Union forces outside of Atlanta. While McPherson was riding his horse towards Old 17th Corps to inspect what was happening, a line of Confederates suddenly appeared. McPherson tried to flee, but the Confederates opened fire and mortally wounded McPherson in the back. When the Confederate troops approached and asked who the officer was, the aide replied, "Sir, it is General McPherson. You have killed the best man in our army." McPherson died at the Battle of Atlanta on July 22, 1864, at 35 years old. McPherson was seen as a talented and promising up-and-coming officer. Many even believed he could have been president one day. The men under his command, his peers, his superiors, and even his enemies all respected him. Upon hearing of McPherson's death, General Ulysses S. Grant stated, "In his death, the Army lost one of its ablest, purest, and best generals." Sherman, when he learned of his death, wept openly and stated, "I've seen McPherson in danger, in the battle when every muscle and every tissue was in full action, when his heroic qualities shone out as a star in the darkest night." James B. McPherson was commissioned as a Major General on October 8, 1862. If he was ranked in the list comparing Major Generals that commanded corps or higher, he would be placed 4th, only ahead of John F. Reynolds. But since he is the only Army commander to die, his death was more impactful, so you could place him number 1 in terms of impact. But by date of commission, number 1 would be Major General John Sedgwick, the highest ranking Union general to die in battle.